Our next speaker is Dr. Shashwati Choudhury. She is from St. Xavier's. So I request Shashwati to deliver his speech. Over to Shashwati.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. I cannot see myself. It's okay. Can you people see me?
Ma'am, you click
Yes.
on your screen.
Yes, Shashwati, you can see. Okay.
Click on your screen, you will be able to see yourself.
Click on my screen.
Someone is again sharing the present. One announcement to all participants. If you share your screen, you will automatically remove from this meeting. So there is a default setting. Once again, I request all the participants, please do not share your screen. Several times we have announced regarding this matter. Still, some participants are frequently sharing their screens. We are being compelled to remove them from the meeting.
Okay, Shashwati, please carry on. Hello,
Just a
Shashwati.
second. Just a second. I'll just. Yeah. Before I start my presentation today, I would like to express my gratitude to both the organizers, the principals of both the colleges, Dr. Runa Biswas and Dr. Manush Kumar Boido, and especially to my ex-colleague, Professor Shomo Banerjee, who was instrumental in asking me to come and speak in this webinar. Before, and also my gratitude to Dr. Manush Chakraborty. We have got really very fond memories before only, and I know him from beforehand. But before I start this webinar, can I just check out whether I can share my presentation with all of you so that it doesn't create any problem while I am presenting? Manushda, can I do that?
Okay.
Okay, I'll just check out if everything is okay or not, okay? Can people see the screen?
Yes, visible. Oh, again it is not.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to check that out. Okay, thank you. I start my presentation today with the topic. My topic, as you can all see, is COVID-19 and the marginalized. I feel that marginalization is a process of being relegated to a very unimportant and powerless position within the society or group. And it is basically relegating them to the periphery of the society. And when we talk about marginalization, we talk about various groups. We talk about various social groups. We talk about religious groups. We talk about races being marginalized. But I feel the primary group whom we can consider marginalized are basically people who are poor or poverty stricken. Because I feel that is the primary cause, the primary marginalization. And when that gets infested into people like gender, like women, so we can call it a double marginalization, or it can be triple marginalization, and so on. So the layers of marginalization are being added as we go further, but the main point is poverty. So here in my presentation today, I'll be speaking on the poor, and I will try to make certain propositions as I go on in my presentation. And along with statistical data, I will try to validate the propositions that I'm trying to make. Now, I don't think I need to say anything about this COVID-19 pandemic, because we know that it has, the whole world is going to witness a huge economic shock due to this pandemic, starting with China, so that the infection cannot be spread to more other countries. It has already spread, but to lessen the spread, various countries has gone to the lockdown mode. And our country too has adopted variously a draconian lockdown, and it started on 24th March. And we know that in various parts of the country, this lockdown is still continuing. Now, one of the burning issue is about the colossal economic damage that is going to be caused, or that has already been caused worldwide due to this lockdown. If we look at the G7 countries, we can get an idea that around 20% to 30% of their GDP is coming as a loss in terms due to lockdown. But when we come to the context of India, the first proposition I would like to make in this context is the number of poor people in the Indian economy is going to rise at an alarming rate in this post-lockdown period. Now, India has got certain characteristics. The most important characteristic is when we are looking at India at this point of time, we are looking at a population of around 1.37 billion people, and the density of the population is around 419.8 people per square kilometer. Why I mention all these things is important because when I talk about urban poor and when I talk about their marginalization, as I will do so in the next part of my presentation, you will understand how density of population is a very, very important variable in this respect. The second point in terms of Indian economy is that our workforce, our labor force has a vast informal sector, and migrant workers have been living on the edge during this lockdown, and the lockdown basically had a devastating consequence for them. And my third point, we speak very profusely about demographic dividend, and we have been saying that India should take some sort of positivity out of the demographic dividend that it has. But I'm sorry to say that our policymakers have not yet been able to do that. But I think at this point of time, the demographic dividend that India has, that is the dependency ratio, which is so high as 37% in Italy, 29% in UK, and around 26% in USA. In the case of India, it is around 9.8%. And if we take only the elderly population and leave out the children, it is around 6 point something. So that means maybe the demographic dividend that India has been experiencing till date is going to act as a cushion, or is acting as a cushion for preventing the coronavirus fatalities to increase at an increasing rate. Before I go further, I first start off with my first proposition. As I've already said, I said that the poverty ratio in the Indian economy is going to rise at an exponential rate in the post-lockdown scenario. Now, we all know that the NSSO, that is a National Sample Survey Organization, they present estimates of monthly per capita expenditure of households in the country. Now, from NSSO's consumption data, poverty threshold estimates are done based on which poverty ratios in the Indian states and the union territories are estimated. Now, I need to make a very, very important point here, that in the context of the Indian economy, we do not have any data which gives us the income of the households. So, the monthly per capita expenditure is taken as a proxy variable for income to understand what are the income of the households. Now, we are in 2020 when the COVID-19 occurred, but we have data till 2011-12 for the Indian economy. Now, latest available data tells us that India had about 270 million poor people. That is around 21.9% of the population were poor in 2011-12. Now, I will cite a work by Shweta Saini. She is a senior consultant of ICRIER, and she has estimated the number of poor people that is going to rise in the post-lockdown scenario. I'm not going to say it's a post-COVID scenario, it's a post-lockdown scenario, where she used the NSSO's unit level monthly per capita expenditure data and the Planning Commission's state level poverty data as base, and she has extrapolated this in terms of an impact of income shock due to COVID-19 on poverty in India. And she has estimated that the poverty in India is going to rise by 46.3% if an income shock of 25% across all fractiles is made. How did she come to this conclusion? She came to this conclusion by, she's saying that there is a loss of around 8.3% in the monthly per capita average expenditure of the households. So for 3 months, it comes to around 25%. We know that obviously 25%, if we make a uniform estimate, that is not right because income is not distributed uniformly, but still we can get an idea as to how much poverty is going to rise. Now, I will just share my screen to show you this figure and how it is important and how it can really affect us. This is the graph that I'm talking about. If you look at this graph, you can see that in 93-94, our poverty ratio was 45.3. That is just after India embarked on a policy of liberalization. And from there on till 2012, we find poverty ratio consistently declining from 45.3 to 37.8 to 29.8 in 2009 and 10 to 21.9 in 2011 and 12. And then from 2011-12, this line that I have shown, which is rising to 46.3, this line is basically the estimated poverty ratio that has been done by Shweta Saini, which is saying that poverty is going to rise to around 46.3%. If I go to the state level figures, I will find that poverty is going to double in almost around 27 Indian states. And if I look further, deeper, we will find that around 5 Indian states, let me name them, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Maharashtra, West Bengal and Madhya Pradesh, they will be accounting for more than 50% of this newly added poor. So you can all understand that with this high level of poverty ratio that we are going to witness in this post-lockdown years, India has basically undone, COVID-19 has basically undone whatever we have been trying to do in our post-independent era. Our main objective had always been alleviation of poverty, and which we had been successful in doing. But now we are at that state where our poverty level has really gone above even the liberalized era, in the pre-liberalized era, 45.3, and now we are having it at 46.3. So my question is, if poverty is going to rise, what should the government do? What should be the policies of the government? I would like to say here a very important maxim that has been put forward by Professor Amartya Sen when he argues that food shortages do not cause famines, but the inability of the poor to purchase food causes famine. So my second proposition in front of all of you is, we are going to face, or India is going to face, a famine-like situation. And this famine-like situation is not going to be in terms of shortage of food, but rather it will be in terms of inability of the poor to purchase food. Because famines are tragedies that can be prevented by effective public action, so that whatever income has been lost during this lockdown can be recreated or put back into the hands of the potential victims. But alas, we see that this is not being done, and I will go further into this in my next slide. Before I go into my next slide, I would like you people to have a look at this chart that I'm presenting in front of you. Here, basically, I have tried to figure out the welfare gain or welfare loss, basically, as you can see here. The welfare loss that you can see here is what the people are going to face. First is in terms of labor income. The labor income, we can have two types of losses. One is a direct loss due to earning due to illness, loss of earning due to illness. And the indirect loss is in terms of earnings or employment shock, because I do not have anything to do. I have lost my livelihood. If I look at the non-labor income, previously there was remittances, there was private transfers. It can be a case that I live in the rural area, my son works in the urban area, he sends some sort of remittances from the cities to me. All this is lost. And public transfer, whatever we used to get before, my question is, did we get it during lockdown? Which my next slides will show that to you. There will be a direct effect on consumption also. This is also in terms of loss, because prices are going to escalate and these price changes are going to affect the welfare. And out-of-pocket cost of healthcare is also going to rise, which again is going to have an adverse impact on the welfare. If we look at the service disruption also, we will see that there's a saturation of the healthcare system. So even those who are not coronavirus victims are not getting their healthcare benefits from the healthcare system. And in fact, due to closure of schools, we see that there can be a closure of midday meals. So nutrition, learnings, dropouts, everything is going to escalate. And so these are all the welfare measures, that welfare losses that we see as an impact of COVID-19. Now, as I said, I want to bring forth in front of all of you what has been India's workforce distribution. The latest data, as I said, is 2011-12, but I will go a bit forward and I will come to the PLFS labor survey, periodic labor force survey, which took place in 2017-18. So 2017-18 data I am showing here in terms of India's workforce distribution. If you look at the data, the red colored columns or bars are showing you the percentage of India's workforce distribution, while the blue colored bars are showing you in millions, in numbers, what is India's workforce distribution. And I have divided them basically into casual, regular and self-employed. And I have further divided the casual laborers into non-agricultural and agricultural, and the self-employed also into the non-agricultural and agricultural segment. So we find, if I took a look at the total self-employed labor force, we will find that around 242.3 million workers are in the self-employed labor force. And when I talk about the self-employed labor force in the agricultural sector, I'm basically talking about small and medium peasant households. And when I'm talking about the non-agricultural segment of the self-employed, I'm basically talking about petty traders and those attached to household enterprises, either as workers or helpers. And when I'm talking about the casual agricultural, we're just talking about landless agricultural laborers. And casual non-agricultural also, who are basically the most vulnerable lot. Now, if I look at what we see from this diagram is that, or from this chart is that, the casual agriculture is around 10.7% and casual non-agriculture is around 13.7% of the total workforce. So more or less, they're making up 1/4 of the total workforce. If you look at the regular, also it is around 24.2%. Self-employed are the largest. They are making around 50% of the total workforce distribution in India, according to 2018 data. So 2018 and 2020 is not really long drawn, so we can really have some estimates from these data. Now, this table is showing us the monthly income according to the worker categories. Now, if I look at the previous chart, we were having casual wage workers, and if I break them up into rural and urban, I will find that it's the rural men were earning around 282 rupees per day, while rural women were earning around 179 rupees per day on an average. Let me tell you one thing, this is much higher than the NREGA All India average wage rates. While if I look at the urban casual workers, the men were earning 335 rupees per day, while women were earning 201 rupees per day. Now, all these figures I have in terms of regular workers and in terms of self-employed. If I totally break them into monthly earnings, I get the average monthly earnings of rural regular rural workers, I'm talking here now not of casual workers, I'm now talking about the regular workers. Regular workers in the rural areas, men, they are having around 14,000 rupees monthly income. And women were having around 10,000 rupees monthly income. While in terms of urban, we found men were having around 18,000 rupees approximately as their monthly income, while women were having around 15,000 rupees as monthly income. And these are the monthly earnings of the regular wage earners. If I look at the self-employed category, in the self-employed category also, the rural men were having earning of around 10,000 rupees per month, while women were having income of around 4,000 rupees per month. If I look at the urban areas, we'll have men having 16,000 rupees per month monthly income, while women were having 6,500 rupees monthly income. If I take all of them together, the all workers, as you can see in my table, if I take all of them together and assume that they had been working 20 days per month, on an average, they had been working 20 days per month, then I find that the monthly income in crores is around 4.8 lakh crore of monthly income that these people lost per month during this lockdown, which amounts to around 2.5% of the whole India's GDP. If I segregate them further into urban workers, I find that they have lost a monthly income in crores of around 2.28 lakh crores of monthly income was lost, which amounted to 1.2% of India's GDP. So what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say here that per month they have lost this. If I talk of the all workers, they have lost around 4.8 lakh crores, and we had a lockdown for around 3 months. So you can just imagine the amount of monthly income that these people had lost, which cannot be substituted by just giving them some amount of rice or wheat or dry rations by the public distribution system, and which cannot be substituted by giving them, the women of the households, in their Jan Dhan accounts 500 rupees for 3 months, which amounts to a measly sum of 1,500 rupees, leaving alone the fact that how many of these women had their Jan Dhan accounts activated. I will come to all those data later. So I am coming to now the share of workers in the wage bill. So I have now seen how much of their income had been lost. Now, if I try to look at the share of their percentage in the total wage bill of India, let us find out. We find out that if I look at the regular workers, I find that their share in the workforce was 24.2%. But they had a huge share in the wage bill, which is around 37.9%. But please look at the casual workers. The casual workers share in the workforce is more or less the same as that of the regular workers. But their share in the wage bill is a measly sum of 12.7%. If I look at the all female workers also and see the same thing, I find that the female workers share 23% in the workforce, but their share in the wage bill is around only 14%. So my proposition in front of all of you and in front of the policymakers and the government is this, that this share of wage bill is so less. If I just look at only the casual workers and the female workers, it's 12.7%. If I translate this wage bill in monetary terms, it will also not be very huge, because I've already told you about the wage rates that they earn. Would it be very high, or would it be very hard for the government to do some sort of cash transfer to these households, to these vulnerable sections, to these marginalized people, so that they can get a portion of their income that was lost during the lockdown period? Or the government should also try to think of devising some sort of public action program such that they get employment. They're all return migrants in the villages right now, so that they get some sort of employment and they get a percentage share in the wage bill. Now, this is macroeconomics data that I just showed in front of you in terms of all India figures. But we need to substantiate in economics. What we generally do is we always substantiate macro or aggregate data using micro level surveys. And here in front of you, I'm going to show you some micro level surveys that has been conducted during this lockdown period by certain organizations. I have gone through some of them, but I found this one which I'm going to showcase in front of you. It is Azim Premji University's Center for Sustainable Employment, who made a survey of 4,000 workers all over the country during this lockdown phase. And I am going to, with citing them, I am going to bring forth certain finding of theirs in front of all of you, so that you really understand what has exactly taken place during the lockdown. Now, this is a chart which is showing us the kind of work that was done during pre-lockdown period, that is just before lockdown started in March. We find in the rural areas, mainly people were more engaged in self-employed, because agriculture is termed as self-employed, so they were mainly in the self-employed, 45% of them, and 42% of them were casual workers. But look at urban. You will see that 48%, a staggering 48% were casual workers, and 17% were self-employed. Salaried workers were 35%. Fine. Now, 48% in the urban workers are casual workers, which means what? They are working as laborers either in construction sites, mainly in the construction site, or in various other jobs. So, during this lockdown phase, what happened to these people when all these construction sites got closed down, when all other livelihoods of these people closed down, how many people were able to keep their jobs? Now, let me say something here. In this survey that Azim Premji University has done, 16% of the respondents were from the rural areas, and 80% of the households, they found out, earned less than 10,000 rupees. And they have kept this as a cutoff criteria for identifying vulnerable households. According to them, vulnerable households were those households which were earning less than 10,000 rupees per month. So, we found that urban workers mostly were casual workers. So now I'm coming to what was the loss in employment for them. Now basically we will try to talk in two terms. One is loss in employment and the other is loss in earnings. Okay. So how many of them were able to keep their work? So we find in the rural areas, 57% reported a loss in employment, but just look at the urban areas, because this is the most important, most staggering, because this will help you to understand the lines and queues of migrant workers on the highways that we witnessed in our TV channels, in the reports and everywhere. The helplessness of these people, because we find that 80% of these people who reported a loss in employment in the urban areas, 80%, which is not at all very less in number. If we look now, out of this 80%, what was their criteria of work? What was their category of work? If you look at this 80%, you will find that out of that 80%, 84% were self-employed, out of the 80%. 76% were regular salary, and casual wage workers were 81%. So what do you see? You see that 84% who were self-employed in the urban areas, they were also the worst hit. So those who were doing, suppose they were electricians, they were plumbers, they were doing some sort of working, so you will find them all unemployed during this lockdown situation. Okay, even those who were domestic workers, the female domestic workers, all unemployed. Now, I think during that period, most of us have witnessed that many of them were just whatever small amount of savings they had. They were out on the streets with maybe a van or something, trying to sell fruits, vegetables, egg, milk, whatever they could lay their hands upon. So this was the type of hopelessness, this was the type of helplessness they faced during the lockdown period. Now, if you look at the rural areas also, again you find that 62% of them who are regular salaried lost their jobs, and 66% of the casual wage workers lost their job. Here you need to understand, in the rural areas, the casual wage workers are who? They're the agricultural laborers who are not allowed to go to the fields during the lockdown period to harvest. Okay, so they were left in the lurch in the rural areas during this period. Here, I would like to make one emphasis also. In West Bengal, what happened? So many rice farms in the agricultural lands were ready for harvesting, but many people could not get agricultural laborers during this lockdown period to harvest their crops. And we found the Amphan cyclone and the aftermath of the Amphan cyclone, how the ready harvest got lost in the cyclone just because during the lockdown they could not get resource to these agricultural laborers to harvest. If I now look at the earnings of the casual wage workers, we find that in the pre-lockdown, this I'm talking both of the rural and the urban areas, I find that 938 rupees was the weekly earnings of the casual wage workers in the pre-lockdown phase. But during lockdown, these casual wage workers were able to earn only 482 rupees. So we find a drop in earning of around 456 rupees, which is around 50% of the casual wage workers. If I look at the weekly earnings of the non-agricultural self-employed, I find a staggering 91% drop in their earnings. Initially, weekly earning of there was, prior to lockdown, was 2,385 rupees. But then during the lockdown, they were able to earn only 218 rupees. So it was a drop of around 2,167 rupees, which amounted to around 91% drop in their earnings. If I look at the farmers, you might be thinking that the farmers were the happy lot. Not at all. You can see that around 50% of them were unable to harvest. Yes.
Please conclude within 10 minutes, okay?
Yes, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Manushka. We can see that around 50% of them, of the farmers, were unable to harvest or sell their produce. I have already told you that why they were unable to harvest, because they could not get agricultural laborers in their fields due to lockdown, and they were unable to sell. 15% were unable to sell because they could not get transportation. Transportation was not there to take their produce from the land, from their land or from their villages to the markets or to the centers where they could sell it. So around 50% were unable to harvest or sell, and only 37% could sell at a reduced price, while 12% sold the harvest at a regular or a high price. So you can see all sections, be they urban, be they rural, were totally devastated. Their earnings were totally devastated during this period. If I look, as I said, I will talk about cash transfer. If I look at the cash transfer, I find that only a half in the rural and 1/3 of the poor households in the urban areas received any sort of cash transfer. Here we are talking of the vulnerable households who are earning 10,000 rupees per month. We found that only 53% of them got at least one cash transfer, and in the urban areas we saw only 38% of them getting some sort of cash transfer. And other cash transfers also was quite less, both for the rural and for the urban. If you look at other cash transfer for the urban, it was only 17%. So now just tell me, how can these people survive in the urban areas without any sort of government assistance? Only 17% getting government assistance and so on. How can they survive in the urban areas? And that is why you saw that after 15 days of lockdown, the large queues of migrant workers on our highways, on our streets, going back to their villages. Okay. And if I look at, I have already said that Jan Dhan has, it's only 64% of women who do not have Jan Dhan account in these respondents. And it's only 30% who received the Jan Dhan cash transfer that the government wanted to make. So I would like to mention here, so you saw the micro level data, and in this data, I feel that the government's economic package of 20 lakh crores, which they are touting it as 10% of GDP, 85% of that package were measures which were meant to increase the liquidity in the economy. It is in no way going to help the workers in any way. They are not going to benefit from this liquidity enhancement move. Only one silver lining I found out is in terms of increasing budgetary allocation of 40,000 crores for NG Narega. So now the government basically has 90,000 crores in this current financial year 2020-2021 for the Narega. But here again, I would like to say something. Last year, 2019-2020, 274 million people had registered for the Narega job, but only 79 million people got them. So my question is, when you have a large chunk of returned migrants back to the village, is this money, is this sum enough to grant them jobs in the public works program? That is my question to all of you. And so I feel that I hurriedly come to my third proposition. I feel that at the end of the day, when I'm talking about all the lacks, all the lackings of the government that the government has done, I think only one thing I need to say at the end of my presentation is the government needs to have some empathy. Empathy is the word, should be the buzzword at present. Because when you have empathy, you will design your policies keeping the poor in mind. When you have empathy, you really need to understand, when you have empathy, you will design digital intermediation. When you have empathy, you will design Aadhaar in such a way that the poor does not feel disempowered. They will not feel disempowered because there are many people who does not know whose thumb fingerprints have been lost because of the hard manual work they done, and Aadhaar is based on that. So when you have empathy, all these things as policymakers will come into your mind. But sadly to say, our government maybe lacks empathy. And so if they had empathy, we might not have seen such violation of human rights. We might not have seen such people on the highways, the migrant workers. We might not have seen how welfare schemes have not really reached these people. That is all I have to say in my presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Manoj Da.
Okay. Thank you, Shashwati.